evening. Welcome Thursday Night Live. Finally, Thursday Night Live again. It's been a hot minute. Those of you that have been following us through the summer, you know that James and I we've been run off our feet. It's been a crazy last couple of weeks, last couple of months, but we had some fantastic news today come through the pipe for us. Profiteers out there, you're all going to hear about it very shortly. Very exciting things, very unique experiences that are kind of coming along for James and I, and you guys vicariously through Soaring Profits and what we're doing here. We were showcased in an article recently in a national publication, which was kind of a neat thing. Again, all this stuff will be coming down the pipe very shortly for you, but that has nothing to do with why we're here tonight, right? We're here. We have these amazing people. We unveil those stories of champions. Tonight is no different. We're joined tonight with Michelle Smith. She's a fantastic woman. Very interesting. There's a lot to kind of unpack in regards to who this young lady is. You guys know Clay Williams, what he's done with the Canal Pursuit. You've heard about his motorcycles. We've done a number of things with Clay over the years, but Michelle is very near and dear to his heart, vicariously through ours now, and she's now one of our profiteers. And Michelle, maybe you can tell us a little bit about, first of all, obviously a runner, you're involved in the Canal Pursuit program, but you do it in a very different way. You're not just running hundreds of kilometers. You're doing it in a way that is like over and above. Michelle, tell us a little bit about that and why.
So originally, I have been involved with Canal Pursuit for 9 years. I missed 1 year. Previously, it was just kind of as a runner and filling in and getting Clay from point A to point B. And that's how we actually met on our first year. And over the last 2 years, something interesting has kind of happened where we wanted to start taking different days and tributing those to first responders, whether it be paramedic services, fire service, EMS, like the Base Borden, Trenton. So we tried to outreach just to kind of reach a different population and allow pathways to be able to communicate and facilitate communications between the different organizations and allowing people an area to talk.
Amazing.
My part came in last year when I had originally said, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea? This is a Friday afternoon. The Canal Pursuit was starting on the Saturday morning. Wouldn't it be an awesome idea if I went and took my firefighting gear and donned it and decided to run, X amount of kilometers. And if you know Clay very well, Clay, will say, hey, let's run 5K. And then all of a sudden you're like 7, 8, 16K in. And there's no sight of the finish line. So originally I had started on the Saturday. I had done the first day, which was for paramedic services. I work as a paramedic, a career medic, and then volunteer fire. And day 2, I picked up out in Romero Township and decided for the first time ever to don my full fire gear, including an SCBA pack, and started running down the highway. And the idea was it would allow an avenue for first responders to talk. And it wasn't just like going and putting on regular clothing, running shorts, running sports bra, running shoes.
Right.
That was too simple.
Right.
That wouldn't present as a topic to talk about.
Right.
And my hope was by doing that, it would be like, hey, have you heard of that crazy person that, donned her gear and decided to go and run 10K or 15K or 20K for mental health awareness?
Yep.
And it would allow other first responders to have that communication and hopefully start to begin to have that facilitation of, hey, well, have you ever had a bad time? Or, just opening up those avenues for people to start talking. And from that, it kind of just morphed. And after that event on that Sunday, we decided to rendezvous at Floral Footbridge in Ottawa on the final day. Clay and some of the other runners, the Ottawa Running Room was there, or the Sunday Run Club. And we had the RCMP, Ottawa Police, and just by happenstance, Ottawa Fire stepped in and kind of, stopped traffic in a couple of spots and lit up lights. And so it was really, what we wanted to happen happened, and it allowed to have those conversations with people. And it was just an awareness piece. My big thing is I really don't like asking people for money, but I really like to be able to spread the word and be able to be part of something, right? And with hopes that if somebody does donate, great, it goes back to the charity. But the big thing is let me or let my story be an avenue for people to talk, right? And whether it is that crazy runner piece that, hey, she just went out and did this ridiculous, because as first responders, especially as firefighters, we know what it's like to have to go into a building, or to have to work a grass fire, or to have to work, any type of environment where we're getting hot and we're inside of our gear and we just want our gear off. And, it sucks. At times it sucks. It sucks in the winter. It sucks in the summer. Right. So it just allowed that burden for other people to, for me to be able to show people that they don't have to bear their burdens alone, right? Like, especially when it comes to mental health and that awareness piece.
So Michelle, if I could
last year,
we put in for 1 second, because there's something really prescient as far as the timing of this interview. Obviously, we're looking at the anniversary of September 11th yesterday. Those that are watching this the next few days, today's the 12th, the anniversary was yesterday. And, you see some of the memorials that are going on all over, North America, really, right? At the end of the day, all around the world. But you see these individuals that are donning their gear. And I know that there was a gentleman that he would do the steps of what it was climbing the towers during that event. But I think that's something that we've sort of lost sight in as a bit of a culture, is the survivorship of a lot of those people that, they lost a lot of friends. They lost an entire community that was an important part of their livelihood and their buddies. That's their lifeline in that career path.
Absolutely.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about, how mental health over the last little while in some of these first responders. You named a couple things, Borden and Trenton. Those are our military bases in the Ontario area. We have Petawawa as well, but these are kind of the major ones around for our American guests that'll be watching. But like, maybe you could talk a little bit about, over the last years, because again, this wasn't a topic that was allowable years ago. There was sort of that coldness. We've had a number of individuals on that talk about the PTSD facet. We had a firefighter out of Seattle, Washington. Seattle, Oregon. No, he was out of Oregon. I don't know why I got Seattle in my mind, but same thing. And this is a gentleman that he had seen it all. Like I think
it's because he makes coffee. Seattle's very coffee.
That's Starbucks. Starbucks. Yeah, we're gonna get hate on that one. But Michelle, maybe you could fill us in a little bit about that, how it's changed.
Well, I think, not just from 9/11, but also from COVID perspective, right?
Right.
We've had some major changes, not just within society's realm, but as first responders. Like, we were the front lines, right? People that were in this position, having to still don our gear and still go out to.
Oh,
I think she might be frozen, but she's absolutely right. Like, they still had to go in. I remember during COVID there, like everyone knows, I have tenants. One of the tenants had an episode where they had a stroke, and in came not only the firefighters, but also the paramedics, and they had to don the most like restrictive gear and carry all their stuff and do all their things, still do their job, and hope we were safe. Like, their first question was, do you guys have COVID symptoms? And this was back at the beginning when everyone was terrified, but they still came in brave, strong, and ready, just like you were explaining. Yeah. So COVID was a really hard time.
So all of that said, as first responders, going back to your mark there, Patrick, that there is that piece where it's a blanket where, they may feel uncomfortable, or there's that silence, right? Where it's not necessarily, or hasn't in the past been accepted for people to actually converse and talk about openly, right? You always hear the stories where, oh, somebody's off on wee leave, or,
Yes.
they wanted an extended holiday, so that has
Yep.
translated a lot since the COVID pandemic, and also from other situations that have occurred in our media and in our news. But, we're not immune to it. And that was one of the things that I was really trying to promote this past time going to the different fire departments, was that I may be okay today, my fellow firefighter may be okay today, but we don't have an immunity. And all of those things, it's like a cup, right? You can fill the cup to the brim, and it could be just that one call that pushes you over. And even though I'm okay today, it doesn't mean I'm going to be okay tomorrow. One of the big things that we kind of iterated to the firefighters, particularly the gentlemen, there's a lot of gentlemen that would say, hey, I've got 6 people I could call on to be a pallbearer tomorrow if I needed to. But how many do they have to say, like, I'm going to be dying and I need you now, and I'm having these emotional pieces that I don't know how to manage and how to cope, and this is where I'm at, right? It's a different type of dying. It's a dying inside rather than more metaphorically. And
Yeah.
how many of those people have somebody to call at 3:00 in the morning? A lot of them don't have 6 people to call. Especially as far as being able to be open and being able to say, hey, I've had to take medication, or I have to do this, or, I need time off, or I need to have time away. It's not right. So now is the time to kind of make those changes where people are able to be encouraged to reach out and receive the help, first and foremost, but also for allowing that identification piece. So, knowing your peers well, knowing the people that you work with and your family well, so that your family can have those identifiers and understand when you may be struggling and who they can reach out to in lieu of having these struggles within the home or within the household, right? And same thing with your peers, being able to connect at the end of the day or connect after a bad call. We always have, the dark humor or the jokes and that kind of thing, because that's emergency response. It's kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
But, sometimes being able to read through that, and is somebody actually having a hard time? And
So how does that change between your partners on the front lines and what you're getting directly from the services? Because again, I think that's the big thing. There's the people that you're trusting your life with. There's a camaraderie. There's I got your back, like you were saying. I got 6 that can carry me, but I need one when I'm on my knees. But that is going to go shift to shift. That's going to go platoon to platoon. That's going to go very different with personalities. But I think what we have to do, and what I've heard from a lot of people, and it sort of sounds, with sort of what you're talking about here, is there needs to be an organizational structure change. Like this needs to come from a business structure within the service to help these individuals and have in a planned way, right? I've got individuals in my life that are police officers, that sort of thing. You have a police officer involved shooting, there's a protocol, right? They end up off the road. They're talked with. This is a completely different thing.
Right.
When you go as a firefighter or as a paramedic and you pick up a baby off the worst terrible things you could imagine, and you guys see it, we can't as citizens and civilians. We don't get it, right?
Right.
But when you do that, it's not an officer involved shooting for legality purposes. It's a go buckle up and put your next. Hopefully, it's not a baby. Like that to me is where we have a systemic problem within the organization. How have you seen that pivot within the services themselves?
Different services have different areas of change that have occurred. So, with EMS, we are not classified as an essential service. So different services are presented differently. When it does come to fire, we do have peer support. We have peer support in paramedicine. Obviously, I don't know with policing, with their structure, but typically after fire calls that are heavy, then we would have meetings, debriefing, and communicate about things that we saw or how we felt. Definitely, like you're saying, for me as a volunteer department, we have that downtime, typically between that call.
Yeah.
But, as far as EMS, that's not always the case. You don't always have that downtime. If things are heavier, I have had in the past where services I've worked for, they have, they'll do a quick debrief and, hey, do you need a few minutes? Are you good? Or you'll have a peer, or you'll have a soup come and check on you and just say, hey, are you good? So they will follow up.
Yeah.
But like you said, you still have to put on that front. And at the end of the day, you have to still go home.
Well, I think that's part of the problem that I've seen with individuals that I know, is that, especially in the EMS, right? There's so many people that are part-time with multiple services, fire, same kind of thing, volunteer, where it almost seems like our hiring practices, and I'll speak to the province of Ontario for this, but our hiring practices is almost like you're temporary relief workers. You want to come and work, come on and work. But when you have a problem, you're sort of on your own. And until you get into that full-time line, you don't receive the services. And that's sort of where, but that's where I'm saying, like, we used to have these positions that were union and, association driven. And we've deviated from that in what it seems like, especially the first responders that are not officer driven, right? Not police service. So like, what is the suggestion? Where do you think that we need to go to solidify that? How can you work for 3 different paramedic organizations and expect that the uniformity steps in, where someone's going to help you, where you're not picking up your next shift tomorrow with a different township?
Right. I think the big thing, Patrick, there is obviously having an umbrella where we can kind of umbrella all of it, a place for people to go. But I think from my experience, a lot of people are afraid to actually even confront the issues or speak out on those things because they don't want it going, even though it states confidentiality, they're afraid of it going back into work, right?
Yes.
And back into their peers. They don't want to have that necessarily translated into work. Yep. What my hope would be is that as a society, as a province, we would be able to have it where there is an outreach program that people can go to, including the families of the individuals that are providing service to our communities, to be able to have that assistance and the relationship to be able to know what to do, how to help, that carrying medical bag on the side where it's like a toolbox, right? Of different, and a toolbox that people can use before things get bad, right? Resources that they can use preemptively to be able to build that resilience that they need, right? Particularly within families, because if you have emergency response individuals, whether it be fire, EMS, or police or military, those individuals are going away for 12-hour shifts. A lot of the time, if you're on a 3-on day and then a 2-night, you don't really see your family very often, right? It's a tough role. And so having your partner or your spouse or your family being able to identify when you're actually having issues may be difficult. They may not be around to see when those issues are actually, festering. And then being able to also themselves having those toolbox that they can rely on it, or even those check-in points where they have somewhere that they can go to receive services for check-ins, to be able to say like, hey, where am I now on that green to red, right? Am I in the orange? Am I in the yellow? And then obviously, again, being able to have a lot of awareness, self-awareness, and being able to provide yourself self-care, right? There's a lot of areas that we really could focus on improvement as far as self-care pieces. I know with fire, you may, depending on if it's a full-time department, have the availability to be able to go and work out while you're at work. Yeah. But when it comes to EMS or it comes to other areas, that doesn't necessarily happen. And I can tell you, like for me, I really take my fitness seriously. And
apparently, yes, apparently, yes,
which is self-evident.
Yeah.
And for me, like, right. Yeah. So the thing is being able to have that at the end of the day, that's my, for me, that's my toolbox. That's my self-care. That's how I process things. That's how I can make myself more resilient. Right. And if I don't have the time to utilize that strategy, because it's a 12-hour shift and you have to be in a half an hour earlier for your shift, and you got an hour drive. So now you're an hour and a half earlier than your 6 o'clock shift start. And, you get off at 5:30, but then all of a sudden, it's now 7:30, 8 o'clock before you get home, and your kids are pawing at your pants, and, you got to go back to work again the next day. Finding that time to be able to do that self-care piece, even that self-reflection at the end of the day, whether it be like having a hot bubble bath or, having some stretching or yoga time or a run. It's very limited within the emergency services. It's very limited. You're going to have one area, give or take, right? Like you're either going to be dedicated in one area, and, a lot of individuals that get into EMS particularly, or policing, they may go in very fit, very strong, very healthy, but you watch them over the first few years and you start to see where they will start piling on weight. They start eating unhealthy. They're starting to drink colas and Red Bulls to be able to stay awake, because that's they're compromised, right? And overall, I mean, fire has switched to the 24-hour. Is that better? I don't know. EMS will probably never go that way, but you can imagine where that compromise is. And again, so, you're talking about going into those calls, those hot calls that you come away with and they fill that cup, and that mental health piece is kind of compromised because of all that stuff going into that cup. And then you don't have that self-care piece. But then at the end of the day, when you don't have that time, something gives, right? So like I said, sometimes people got that extra large cup that can handle a lot of stuff, but some people have that little small cup that's like more of a shooter.
Right.
I think a big part of the problem is those kind of jobs in the health field, in like fire and police, you're supposed to be a superhero. You're supposed to not feel things. Right. You're supposed to just show up, be the calm in every storm. Absolutely. So then you get into the mental idea that I cannot show a crack because all of these people around me, including my family, are depending on me not to crack. So to then go, hey, today was a really bad day, I saw some awful, atrocious things, is showing a crack. And even though just talking about that may make you feel better, there is that risk of the people around you thinking, I don't want to go to a call with this guy, he's broken. Right. Like, do you think that's part of the problem, that if I come out and speak on a little level, I'm not saying that I can't work, I don't think I'm mentally unprepared, I'm just saying today really bothered me. Then you have that idea that when the people around you are like, oh, he's kind of broken, I like, can I be safe with him? Do you think there's a piece of that?
There's definitely the culture there. I think that it will take a long time for things to change.
Right.
I would hope that people would not necessarily feel that way. It's hard to say. I think it depends on how new you are into a service also, right? If you are a newer medic, you have had a lot more training on mental health and mental awareness and self-care. More of it's in the media. So you're coming up into a different culture time. You still have the older generation where you sweep it underneath the rug and you don't talk about it and you put on that front. Yeah. And I think that, so long as we continue to talk about things, and so long as there's people like Clay or, even myself, where we kind of come out and say like, hey, just because we're okay doesn't mean that we should always not talk about these things. It's those forbidden topics that you want to make sure that you encourage, because I think that that's healthy. It helps build that resilience. It creates that toolbox, right? And it allows an avenue and a door for people to come to, is my hope, right? So that, maybe that everybody doesn't have to have that, 2-inch thick crust. Right. And they realize that there are some people that are more like, hey, feel free to knock on my door or give me a
Yeah.
call at 3 a.m. in the morning, right?
Mhm.
Because yes, like you said, there is some of that culture that's there where, yeah, there's definitely people you can't talk about it. I reckon like just even this past event, speaking with somebody and they said, Clay said about signing his famous flag, as I'm
Yes.
sure that you're aware of.
Oh yeah.
And he said, I ask for people to sign the flag so that if they know of anybody or they themselves or any family members have ever suffered from any mood disorders, mental health issues, it is a sign of they don't have to carry their burdens alone and that I carry their burdens and it remains in ink on that flag. And that has been a testimonial flag for 10 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In saying that, during a conversation that I had, one individual said, well, what if you don't know of anybody? What if you don't know of anybody that has mental health issues or moods disorders or this or that PTSD? Well, you do.
It's not possible.
And the thing is you've just not made yourself available.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And
Mhm.
especially if you're working in an emergency response field, it's a problem because you're
Yes.
ignorant to it.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
showing and you're sending that statement or you're sending that message to people that there is that 2-inch thick and you sweep it underneath the carpet and you don't talk about it. And that's not the culture that we need to create, right? We want to be able to stop things before they get worse. And by being able to communicate with people, that's how we manage that piece, right? And I think that that's very important and imperative in that growth, development, and repair, right? And being able to keep people in a good place.
Yeah, and that part is so important because usually the things that we don't experience, like Pat and I, we're not in the front lines of anything except, maybe we see a car crash, but when you do see those things, it's a traumatic event and you get flashbacks over the next couple of days. You may wake up sweating and dreaming about it. And that's one incident maybe in a 54-year lifetime. You guys get 4 in a day. And to think that not talking about that and not sharing those stories and those experiences and then just joking it off is a better way to go than, hey, let's sit down and talk about what happened today. Like that was, we had to put a blanket over a car and that was tough. So let's talk about that, work that through, and we'll be ready for the next call. There's nothing wrong with us discussing it and making sure everyone's okay and that we haven't triggered something. Yeah. And if we have, it's okay to say, you know what, maybe I'm not ready to go back out. Yeah. And I think that's where we are failing over and over again, especially in Ontario and especially in Canada. I know in the States is that everyone puts up the flag, mental health awareness. We're going to get it soon. Bell Media, mental health awareness. Go, 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 go. Yeah. But I know my organization, as soon as we say, hey, I have a mental health problem, I need a break, they're like, no, get back to fucking work. Yeah. Screw you. What are you doing wasting our money and our time and our resources?
I want to push back on that, James, because again, it's one of those things organizationally. It's what we talked about at the top of the hour here is that so from an organizational structure, we have X number of employees. We're staffing to have X number of employees.
Right.
So how do we have 12 or 18 or 35% of our employees off working? And that's so like,
but if you catch it right away, Pat, see, this is where you're wrong. And we've had this discussion before. If you will make a climate where I can come in and go, hey man, I'm having a really tough day. This is why. And they go, you know what? Great. We're going to cover for you. Rather than, no, I'm good. I have lost my fucking mind and I'm going to be off. Not only am I going to be off, now I'm going to be addicted to drugs. I'll never work again. And then you have to replace them. That is what you're missing. Like it is way better to put on the concurrent medical support because it is a medical need than to just say, you know what, once your head's cut off, then we'll help. You go ahead, Pat.
Well, so
Argue
again,
away.
I love.
sorry,
I love
Michelle.
what we're
Welcome
doing.
to the show.
No, but it is. This is sort of the idea, and these are the conversations. But like, we can do the like, and this is not disrespectful. I have nothing but the most support for first responders.
Yeah.
But we can't do kumbaya, or nothing will get done. We have to have a balance. We have to figure out what that looks like. And if we're going to have individuals that are going into this line of work, there is an understanding that you're going to see some stuff, and there's a personality type that goes along with that. But there also has to be a service directive, right? We have to be able to go to these calls. We have to be able to have pumpers on the streets putting out fires. So that's where I'm saying, from an organizational structure, we have a dichotomy that we have to figure out, right? We have to staff enough people. We need to support our people. But that's a policy directive that has been like this, that I feel is slowly coming into this alignment. But it's taking a long time. And unfortunately, there's casualties along the way. And that's where I think that our services, and that's why, Michelle, I asked you at the top of the hour is, what are you seeing in a tangible way where they're stepping in and going, I'm going to do something before you're too gone, like James was implying, right? Because when we talk about the Americans and Canadians, we are a little bit more touchy. We're a little bit more feeling centered. We're a little bit more emotional awareness, I think, personally, in our services. The Americans are like, sorry, man, you're out. And that's where we've seen a couple guys in the last couple years that are saying, hey, we need to create this massive amount of awareness because we're losing guys. There's guys that are starting their revolver in their garage because that's their only way out, and they don't see a path. And that's not acceptable. And that's what it sounds like what you're doing is the awareness piece, Michelle. Yeah. And you're doing it at the run level. You're doing it going around and talking with services. You're going around and really getting in front of the individuals that are frontline, that are seeing and doing it. But how do we get to the white shirts? How do we get to the people that are going to be there working with your community members that are funding these programs? And that's where I think that it's a beautiful thing that you're doing it within the community, but also pushing it down the line and going, let's get some publicity. I'm in my garb. I'm running my full gear. Let's take notice. And that's what I think is so cool about what you've done. You've stepped outside the comfort zone and you've made it absolutely unavoidable. I can't not see what this woman is doing. Why did you think the gear run was the best way to go? Was it just for that factor?
Pretty much.
I love it.
The big thing is people don't have to bear their burdens alone.
That's cool.
It showed the difficulty that people face, the darkness, the heat, the pain, the discomfort, the wanting to be over, getting out, right? Definitely this past year, Patrick, I'm not sure if you know exactly what happened because I hadn't really spoken to too many individuals yet about this past term. This past time, Clay had came up with the idea that I would run 100 kilometers, meet him on Floral Footbridge, and continue on to Parliament Hill. The last week prior to the event taking off, Ottawa had been in the news several times over the last few months about the PFAs that were in the gear. And despite the fact that the gear was brand new, the gear had not been in any structural firefighting or in use at all. The gear was new. It's the PFAs that are embedded into the fabric.
Interesting.
And they were concerned for my well-being and for the image that it would create if they showed support behind me wearing the gear from Merrickville, Ontario through to Ottawa.
Interesting.
My mission was to create an awareness. My mission was to be able to speak and do something different that nobody else has done. It was a hard decision to make, but we chose that I would not wear the gear. In turn, that would show I was supporting Ottawa's position within what their belief was with the PFAs, which, it is in the news a fair bit right now. And we knew that the gear would be anywhere from 45 to a 50 pound weight that I would be wearing. The week prior, without having the experience and without knowing what it would feel like, I decided to top that motion, drop the gear.
Yep.
And on the Thursday prior to going to Merrickville to start on the Friday, I went down to Markham. Markham has a store which is based with AI Tactical. So they do all tactical gear.
Yep.
They suited me up with 100 pounds of weight. I took a rucksack and put 60 pounds and 40 pounds off of my front to double what my weight would be in comfort or discomfort in full gear. When I started in Merrickville this year, I had 100 pounds of gear with the rucksack and the front vest, with my running shirt for my fire department and a fire helmet that was a retired fire helmet, and started off for Ottawa. So that's how this year slightly morphed and changed, and why it changed where I was not wearing the fire gear per se to the idea that I had last year. Last year was the full fire gear.
But
well,
let's talk a little bit about that for a second, because I think that's a unique thing that a lot of people aren't aware of. I've got a family business, a family friend of mine that's in the business of actually washing and returning used fire equipment. That's what they do. They sell machines. They sell them all over the world. Fantastic business if you're out there looking for a business. Actually, don't do it. It's too good. You're making too much money doing it. But I didn't realize that the forever chemicals that are in these suits, first of all, as a protectant, and then when you walk into a burning building that's full of asbestos and PCBs and all elemental Ps, you guys are emitting that and carrying it around with you. And then when you're washing that can't just go away. You have to deal with that. So tell me a little bit about what Ottawa's stance is on that and kind of what their viewpoint is.
So currently Ottawa is petitioning that the firefighting gear has changed, where we do not have the same level of PFAs right now, even right down to the station wear, which is the pants that you wear, has PFAs in it, right? So all of fire retardant things, so including children's pajamas, have fire retardant. And that fire retardant carries a risk of carcinogenics. So not only are you exposing yourself to the carcinogenics in your ambient air, like what you're talking about in the fires, and then it coming home with you on your skin if you don't shower right away, or in your hair, but also on that clothing if that clothing doesn't get washed right away. But you're also exposing it to yourself within the clothing. So their big stance is they don't want any of their firefighters in gear, bunker gear, turnout gear, when it's not needed until the changeovers have occurred. Now that opens a whole nother gamut as to, a little bit of side research that I did the last final week before we took off for the Canal Pursuit in August, because it was something that came down the pipeline so fast and I knew nothing really about it. Like, I knew about the carcinogenics in our bunker gear, and that's why I chose to train only in bunker gear that had not been already in a fire, which was a whole nother, training to go and run in 20K versus 100K is a different story.
So
especially when you're talking about wearing gear that dehydrates you constantly every time you go and train in that gear, right? Going right down to I needed to make sure that I had lost an inch on either thigh to compass the amount of fabric in between the legs of the pants. We even had the company come in to see whether or not we could modify the suit, because the suit does not fit a 119-pound woman. The suits are more geared for men. And that was the same thing as the pack that I end up wearing, the rucksack. The rucksack was designed for a man. So, the bottom was way past my bottom, and we had to try to Velcro it up to try to be able to accommodate a small person, right? They don't make gear small for men.
So you're packing on
just to help people understand, sorry, Pratt, that even in a small run, even if you're going 5K, 10K, whatever, even in a small run, you have keys in your pocket and the keys rub back and forth. By the end of your run, you have a mark there, if not a bruise. So if you're talking 100-pound rucksack on a 118-pound woman, if that's you're going to have a serious bruise, and also you're going to have an injury that it will be very hard to recover from. So I get it. Everything, like from when I do marathons, my water bag has to be balanced. When I put my snacks in, I make sure it's all balanced. So what she's talking about is very difficult when you're talking about like a suit that is taking away your breathing, your sweat. Like sweat was something I had to deal with, because when you're losing water at a faster rate than you can take in, your body shuts down on you. Yeah, it is terrible.
That opens up a whole nother, last year, even just that 10, 15 kilometers, every 10 minutes, I was having to drink half of a Gatorade. Well, your electrolytes go off, so it can't be absorbed through your intestines. So then you get sloshy stomach. So all those things had to be considered during training. So that last week, with Ottawa's change, and for me to be able to have them facilitate being on board, me all of a sudden saying, hey, throw 100 pounds on me without ever knowing what it's going to feel like, was definitely courageous.
Yes.
Because it was not something that I had trained to do, nor knew how it would feel. You can only train for so much, and the rest of it has to be sheer stubbornness.
Yes. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, no, there is a lot of stubbornness to it. And I don't know how some of the runs I've done, partway through, your brain starts going, I don't even know why I signed up to this. What am I doing? Your body, though, it's strange, because you're in a kind of a moment where your body can keep going. It's your brain that starts shutting down your body. Have you experienced any of those moments, and how did you overcome them? Because I know there's been a couple of times. The first time I ever did a marathon, I got to kilometer 30, and I started thinking to myself, if I just stop running and I walk over there and I call an Uber and go home, no one's going to care. So why don't I just do that? I can have a burger and fries and a beer, and my life will be good. But then you got that, but it's not because my body can't finish, because I finished it. So it's that brain that starts attacking you, which is very into what we're talking about right now, your mental health.
Mental health.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely have had my fair share of experiences. My longest distance has been over 100 miles. So I've had that breakdown of knowing what that feels like, right? To train for this past event, I spent a lot of time doing mental training, because I felt that was going to be where I needed to really focus my effort. I knew that my body could keep up. For me, I don't think that I think it would be very, very rare for somebody to be able to throw on 100 pounds. If you're a 175 pound man, to put on another 175 pounds is just like, if you're a 200 pound man and throw 200 pounds on and go run 100 kilometers,
you're sort of like an ant.
Yeah.
So for me, I think preconditioned to being able to do this, because I had been substantially larger before. My top weight was 356 pounds, and I have lost all of that weight. Amazing. And that's why I do such long endurance runs. And that's why I'm so much into fitness. I've worked as a fitness professional for 20 years prior to COVID.
That's cool.
So I knew that my body was accustomed to being able to handle that kind of weight. And that's why I felt that the mental training would be where I needed to really make sure I took the focus. Cool. Going back to your question there, James, about, did I have those times of darkness? When Clay and I parted ways from Kemptville on the Friday evening, Clay had leaned over and whispered in my ear and said, you're going into the night. You're going to be facing some dark times. We're going to be facing some dark times, because he was at the end of his, 7-day, 8-day run also. And we're going to face these dark times together. I'll see you tomorrow at Floral Footbridge. And that was it. During that event, there was definitely times where I rationed back and forth. I think I ended up wearing only the full amount of weight for about 80 something kilometers. At the end, I chose not to wear it into Parliament Hill, because I realized what I was preaching to people that they don't need to bear their weight alone, I needed to reciprocate.
Sure.
I had a team.
That's cool.
I had people that could carry the weight for me. And I decided at that point of time, my body was still doing well. But, you know, as I said earlier, Clay likes to add miles and kilometers. And there was several times where I was like, I'm at 100 kilometers. I'm at 100 kilometers. What do you mean? I still have 7.5 more kilometers to the next fire station. And I have 5 more fire stations to go. That was a real mental trip. That was really hard on me. I spent quite a bit of my time speaking with a lot of the firefighters, which took a lot of my energy mentally.
Right.
But that was part of that mission, being able to go and speak.
So 100 pounds, hang on a second, 100 pounds, you show up to a fire station, they come out and they're like, that's amazing. She's crazy, whatever their viewpoint is. And then you talk to them about what you're doing. I would have just laid down and died. And you went to multiple fire stations all across this, had the energy and the empathy, because that's what it boils down to, is that you're doing it for these people. That's next level.
I spoke to 14 fire departments in Ottawa, Merrickville, and Kemptville. They were fantastic.
Awesome.
A lot of the council came out to see me.
That's cool.
I had people from the running rooms come out and be able to help with facilitating pacing. I had an amazing support crew. My daughter and her partner crewed for me throughout the night. I spoke with RCMP. I spoke with Ottawa Police. I had 2 EMS stations that I visited. 2 of them were at nighttime. 2 other fire departments were also at nighttime. So there was upwards to 20 different departments that I spoke to while doing this. And, you know, sometimes they would give me cookies. Sometimes they would give me pasta. But back
I
to
think
that.
you earned the meal. Like I
you
feel
earned whatever the hell you want.
I
think you can walk in and do whatever you want.
I love
back down to that, you know, that dark time, you know, I left the 3rd fire department or the 2nd fire department to the end. And I was really kind of getting like just very difficult. My pacers and my crew were away from me at the time. I was kind of navigating on my own at that point. And the fire station sent me on my way with a cookie and a serviette.
That's not kosher.
And the cookie smelled so good. I was so excited to have this cookie. And I got to a crossroad where the map said I needed to cross, and it was leading onto a roundabout onto a highway, and the maps were not updated.
Oh no.
And they could see me from the GPS, and they said, you need to kind of go from here to there, but I don't know how you're going to get there. And there was a trolley way, and there was a go-car station and like a train station. And I went and sat on the steps of this train station and ate my cookie and cried and used a serviette to wipe my eyes. And I was just like, I was so done. And I bawled. And I, you know, my brother lives in Alberta, and on the last minute, he took a flight from Edmonton and flew into Ottawa and met me.
Awesome.
I haven't seen him in 8 years, but he came out and he met me to watch what I was doing and to kind of like be the support person for me, which was amazing. You know, it was a short visit, but it was amazing to be able to see him there and part of it because he's had his own struggles and his own journey. He works in corrections. So, you know, it was speaking volumes to him, especially where he's at currently in his struggles. So my daughter messaged me back, my brother messaged me back, and I said, you know, this mile's for you. I got up, I wiped my tears from my serviette, ate my cookie, and started trucking. And the text message back said, we see you moving, keep going, you got this. And so the last few miles were definitely very tough. You know, I could still break into a run. Especially once I took the packs off, I had no issue with running. But it was definitely the rest of the time was just, it was my head. My head.
I could do another 100. You can do another 100.
That is just it, Michelle. Like, it is amazing. Not only are you a hero on the field, where you're literally saving lives, stopping fires, but you also have this determination and endurance that is like no other where you're carrying 100 pounds, which is double your weight, which is, I don't know, if you don't run, you just don't even, you can't even fathom, because like every pound you put on your body makes
Slows
it
you.
harder to run. And I'm talking like 10 pounds of water, maybe. Like, I'm not talking 100 pounds. It's unbelievable what you do. But to do that for others, you're not doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for your own mental health. You're not doing it. You're not doing it, even like you said so beautifully, I'm not doing it to raise money. I am doing it because there are people out there that need to know it's okay to be not okay. And it is so important. If you're not a firefighter, you're not a policeman, it's okay for you not to be okay too. If you're a mother at home, you got 3 kids and you're having a tough day, it is okay for you not to be okay too. Your mental health is just as important as a firefighter, as mine, as Pat's, as Michelle's.
Right.
And you really do have to keep it a daily thing. And if you're feeling something, you need to find that person to talk to. It is most impressive. You think you're alone. You think you're on an island. You think you really do start convincing yourself, because your voices attack you, that if I tell anyone, they're going to turn their backs on you. And I'm telling you right now, to the last person that's been around me, I've told them my struggles, including Pat, who's a heartless bastard. And they're still in my life, and they still love me, and they still care. And they have helped me through more than any therapist could.
Yeah. You're
Not
still
that I'm saying you should go to a therapist. I do. But I'm saying that knowing that I'm not alone is the biggest thing that you can do. Join those communities, talk to those people. Michelle, thank you so much for coming. We're kind of at that time.
Thanks,
we could
James.
talk to you
That's
for
okay.
hours and hours and hours. I love what you're doing. Profiteers out there. On another note, I know we've been like limping along through the summer, but we have a couple of things coming down the pike. We got Wealthwise coming back live, in person, fast pace, hopefully next week. I think Pat is dusting off his
hey, who knows? You're the producer. You just tell me when to show up.
That's true. That is true.
I just know the face, man.
Burner and Grubbs and Patrick, and they have an amazing guest that you're going to want to see. And you know, as we go forward, we have some exciting news in a lot of different places. We're changing lives on the home front as well. And I just think, to take out of this little conversation that we had, if you do anything at all, if you're feeling alone, go talk to someone. It doesn't even have to be someone special. Soon as you start breaking that seal, where you start talking to people and you start normalizing how you're feeling, you're infinitely better. And you need to take that time. Profiteers out there, you know I love you. If you need something, you can reach out to me. Send us a DM. You can go check out Canadian Mood Disorder Society of Canada. Is that right?
Well, eventually, yep.
There's lots of supports there. Defeat Depression, which is also that other arm of that. Reach out to them. There are so many supports out there that you can help. Please do reach out. Don't be alone ever again. Let's heal our minds, bodies, and souls together. Pat?
Michelle, again, like James said, it's fantastic. It's amazing. Your story it's revolutionary in what you're doing. And again, it's not one of these situations that it's all about the dollar bills. You're doing it on a totally different level. And I love that. And the awareness of how you're doing it, the Ottawa situation that you handled, and you just moved and you pivoted and you found a new way to do it with that camaraderie in mind. Like, I'm not going to step on you. I want to be a part of this. I want to show you our support. I think it's amazing. Michelle, keep in touch with us. Profiteers out there, make sure you know, if you can show some love, throw some money to some of these causes that are out there. You've got them all in your community. Your Canadian Mental Health Society, you've got the Defeat Depression, like James was saying. Throw some money, help those organizations. But most importantly, you know, throw a little love to Michelle here as well. She's on social media. You can track her down and go from there. Michelle, if someone was out there right now in sort of that dark place that you were kind of talking about, the individuals that are around you in your work environment, what's a piece of advice kind of sending us off that you would leave them with?
Stay in the mile you're in.
That's
Ground
good.
yourself. Stay in that mile. Stay in that focus.
I love that.
Just keep going through that.
Yeah.
You'll get to the end.
With the runner's touch. I love it. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.